Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. I am out of ideas, as always. My brain slowly gets worse and worse throughout the course of the year, and by the end of the year my brain's just kind of dead. I'll think of some new video ideas sometime soon, but as of right now I'm out, and that means I'm back to tier lists, because that is always the bottom of the barrel, easy pickings video ideas. I did a ranking AoE video a week or two ago, and you guys seem to like that, so I figured I would rank the Loremaster spells. This tier list is a bit special as well, because it has the Spellement upgraded version as well of some of these, so I can rank both the original one and the Spellement upgraded one, rather than just the original. That's pretty cool. The categories are ranging from needs a nerf, this is if it's too broken, to fucking sick, which is just an amazingly really good spell. We have really good, decent, situational, and needs a buff. So now that you know the categories, let's start ranking the spells. First though, let me say, I figured I'd preface the video with this instead of leaving this in the comments, or instead of people commenting this. This is a PvE video. I don't care about PvP, I've never cared about PvP, and obviously certain spells that I rank here are going to be completely different in PvP. I'm talking purely PvE, based on each school, what each school does, what they're made for, and also how useful the spell is to them. Because a spell like Athena, per se, is going to be a lot worse in PvE than it is in PvP. So, that's what I'm ranking it based on. If you don't like PvE content, go subscribe to someone else. Anyways, let's get it started. Having a good time, we'll rank all the spells. Starting with Angry Snow Pigs. This one for me, I've always seen as needing a buff. It's really not that good. It does like very little damage for 4 pips and then steal 1 ward. I've never found this to be that useful. I've never even really seen where this would be used in like an applicable sense. I mean, someone leave in the comments if you know, but for me, literally, I've never seen where this would be applicable in any fight ever. It's just not that useful, and there are better ways to remove wards than to do a very little amount of damage with Angry Snow Pigs, in my opinion. Next is Athena. Next spell is Athena. Athena costs 5 pips, does 520 damage, and then puts a minus 35 negate damage type thing on yourself. Basically, it's like a weakness. This spell, in my opinion, is pretty good, but it has a significant problem, and that is that it costs 5 pips, and right up until level 100, it's not going to be incredibly useful. I would say it's not too bad, but it's not really the best spell that Myth gets in Loremaster, definitely. It's more a decent spell. Like, it's good, it's not bad, it has some applicable uses. I just don't think it's overall that good. In regards to like what buffs you could give it to make it better, potentially either make it 4 pips and lower the damage a little bit, or maybe raise the damage a little bit as well. Like if you compare it to, say, Ninja Pigs, the damage is quite less for the same amount of pips. I don't know, it's just, I think personally, it's just not really a spell that's worth using. Alright, next we have Berry Surprise, which is a 4-pip storm spell that will either do 585 damage or 585 healing. I actually kind of like this one. I would say it's not like super good. I would say it's like definitely like decent, and it's a little bit above Athena decent. It's pretty good because it either does quite a lot of damage for 4 pips, like 585 damage is a lot for 4 pips, or it does some healing to yourself, which honestly is only beneficial as a storm. Personally, I think that this is a pretty good spell, but it does have that risk attached to it, which is what makes it, you know, keeps it out of these top 2 tiers. The thing about it, right, is that a lot of times you're not going to want to take that risk. If it was just purely a 585 damage for 4 pips, then it would probably be like fucking sick up to needs a nerf, because that is a lot of damage for a 4-pip spell. But it does have that dual quality to it, so it's like either pretty good or, you know, like meh. It's really up to you. I think it's pretty good. I think the main issue with it is the randomness, otherwise it would be higher. Next is Brimstone Revenant, and this does 470 damage and adds a fire trap to the next spell. I would say it's not bad for 4 pips. It's actually a pretty good spell. 470 damage is quality for 4 pips. It's just used as like a side spell to hit enemies if you want to do some damage for a low amount of pips. I'd say it's pretty good. Yeah, that's really it. Next we have Burning Rampage, which does 70 and then does 700 3 rounds later. Personally, I've never been the biggest fan of these. They're just kind of like, they lengthen the battle, which is, you know, not something I really want. I'd say this is more situational, like if you need to remove a like a ward or something on the enemy and you want to remove that first with that 70. But in my eyes, it's like, I don't really find this to be that useful because I like to finish my battles as fast as possible. I like, you know, I like being able to speed through certain battles. I don't want my battles to take 30 minutes when they could take 10, if you know what I mean, right? So that's why I've always considered like Burning Rampage and a lot of deal over time spells to be pretty bad, to be honest. But overall, you know, it's all right. I would say it's more situational. Next we have Camp Bandit, which does 295 damage and converts a trap on self to a life trap on the enemy. It costs 5 pips. Really the only situation that I would see this being useful would be a boss that has a cheat that puts traps on you, but even then those are far and few between. Like those are very, very rare. Usually bosses either put up a shield, put up a blade, or put like a weakness on you. Traps on you is very rare for a boss, so I'm gonna say it needs a buff. It really is not that good of a spell, I would say. It's all right, but like for 5 pips for that little damage for an effect that just isn't that useful, I would just say Camp Bandit is just kind of bad. Next we have Catalan, and Catalan I would put like firmly in the decent tier. I think the decent tier is when it does quite a bit of damage and adds that like side effect, but there's no real reason I would use it in battle. Like I don't think I would ever really use Catalan all that much, but I'm not going to say it's situational because it is a decent hitting spell. It does do decent damage. 700 damage is pretty quality for 5 pips. One complaint I have with this spell is that its spell animation takes a long time. I would say it's okay, but it just takes a long time. Next we have Catch the Day, which for 5 pips does 550 to 600 damage and then removes 2 positive charms from the target. This one, honestly, I'm going to say is decent as well. I don't think it's that useful. I know a lot of people like Catch the Day, but removing 2 positive charms isn't like super important. I don't see where this would really come in handy. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does like mediocre damage and then does an effect that isn't even that good. I mean, maybe I'm just not seeing it, but to me, I don't get the hype around Catch of the Day. I know a lot of people like using it. Maybe it's just my bias against Storm Wizards, but like there's really never been a point in my life where I'm like, man, if I had Catch of the Day here, this battle would be going over faster. No, it's like, you know, I don't know. Whatever you want to think. Next, we have Celestial Intervention, and I'm just going to say it, both of these need a buff. Even at max upgrade, it's not worth using. What it does is it heals you per shield sacrificed, and it's just not useful. Maybe I'm crazy, but for 4 pips, healing, let's just see the base one, right? 135 per shield, up to a maximum of 3. It's up to a maximum of 3, by the way, which means even at the highest upgrade one, you can only heal 600 health. That is, say, 500, what, 500 if you take 135 and multiply it by 3? It's 400, actually. I'm stupid. So you take that 400 for 3 shields, you would have been just better off keeping the shields, to be honest. Like, there's no point in getting that health. 200 is like barely an increase, like getting 600 health. I don't know. I don't know what the purpose of this spell is. I'm gonna say I'm gonna put it there. Next we have Deer Knight, and Deer Knight I will say is no, I'm gonna say it's really good. Deer Knight is really good. It's not as good as it used to be though. Deer Knight is a quality death spell. Don't get me wrong. If you asked me what Deer Knight is like, say 2 years ago, I would have put it probably into fucking sick. It's a good spell. The problem is, and there's 2 problems for me. One, Ship of Fools is just blatantly better at this point. Ship of Fools is the way to go. If you don't have Ship of Fools, like getting Ship of Fools at some point is a good idea. Obviously, not everyone has the money to do that, and so they use Deer Knight. That's understandable. I would say Deer Knight is a good, really good, like, I would say it is this tier in that case. Like, if you don't have Ship of Fools, it's this tier. But with Ship of Fools, it's just kind of a decent spell. Like, it's not that good. It has one of my least favorite things in this game, which is overtimes. I just think it's pretty meh. And I'll explain. Let me explain a little bit more why I hate that overtime. First off, there's the fact that the overtime will make the battle take longer. When you could have done base damage, you did an overtime. It makes the battle take longer. Ultimately, that's just one of my least favorite parts about it. 2, it splits the enchant. And what I mean by this is that, say you have the full 300 enchant from Epic. Instead of enchanting it so that it does 600 damage off base and then 270 overtime, it splits that enchant. So it does 450 at base and then 3 something with the overtime. To me, that's just unacceptable. Like, it's not worth it to do that when you could do quite a bit more base damage and make the battle take like significantly less. Like, if you have Ship of Fools, for example, that 300 plus that 300 enchant, gonna be doing 600. I would much rather do 600 at base and then use the spell again later than do, say, 450 at base and then do 400 overtime. I know that it doesn't really make sense, but if you think about it, you can use, in the time that it takes you to use 2 Deer Knights, you can use 3 Ship of Fools, which is just a little bit, in my opinion, it just makes Ship of Fools better ultimately if you think about it. So that's my tangent on that. I'm just going to say Deer Knight is really good. It could be higher, but I would say it's there. Next is Goat Monk, and Goat Monk is like one of those things where I think it needs a buff. There's no real reason to do it. If they made this spell 4 pips, sure. Actually, that would be really good, I would say. But they made it 5 pips. This damage right here is what a 4-pip spell should have. Like, there is no excuse. Goat Monk needs to be updated and changed to 4 pips. That is something as simple as that would be good. If not, they need to add some kind of secondary effect to it to make Goat Monk worth using. But ultimately, I would just say it's not that good. Next, we have Grendel's Amends. And Grendel's Amends is a problem, right? Where it's a good healing spell for Myth. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's not. But it does cost 5 pips. 5 pips is a little bit problematic. That is one full extra round that you could be spending doing anything else. But I'm not going to say it's a bad spell. In fact, I have a friend who has a Myth Wizard, and it has literally saved Darkmoor runs at times. Like, it is, you know, it's come in handy. So I'm going to say that it's decent. It could be good. It could be better. 745 is a lot of healing. That is a lot of healing. I just think it goes out of Myth's primary role, and ultimately it costs 5 pips. It's a little bit meh. I honestly would take it more if they lowered it to 4 pips and then lowered the healing a little bit. But that's just me. But I would say Grendel's Amends is decent. It could be better, really, which is the reason why it's here. But I would say it's good. Next is Hammer of Thor, which will remove a weakness from yourself and then do 475 damage. I don't know how to feel about this one. I like the remove weakness portion of it, but I've never found it to be too useful. I'm gonna put it into decent. I think it's okay. It has its uses, but I would really not use that much. I don't think its damage is all that much. The only reason why I'd use it is if I had a weakness, which I guess makes it more situational, but I would say it's still a decent spell to use otherwise. Ultimately, it's just up to you. I don't know. I think it's okay. Next, we have Handsome Fomori, and this one does 450 to 530 damage and a minus 25 accuracy. This one really, I would honestly say this one needs a buff. There's really no reason to use it as an ice. It does like mediocre damage and then puts a minus 25 accuracy. Accuracy debuffs aren't that useful. I don't know. I'm just gonna say it's not that good. Next we have Headless Horseman. Now Headless Horseman, I'm gonna say it probably needs a nerf. I love this spell and I don't want them to nerf it, but it definitely probably needs one. I don't know if you guys realize this, but the damage to pip ratio of this spell is crazy. 530 to 590 damage for 4 pips is nutty. I don't know if you guys realize that. It's crazy, right? You can look here. It does more damage than most of these storm spells, it does almost equal to Catch the Day for 1 less pip. It's really nutty how much damage this does. You can compare it to, like, say, any other of these 4 pip spells. It's insane compared to them. It does way more than Goat Monk, and Goat Monk costs a full pip higher. Obviously, it's a really powerful spell. If it's not here, it does need a nerf. I think it needs a nerf. It's a little bit broken. Next is Hephaestus, and Hephaestus, I would say, isn't that good. Hephaestus doesn't do that much damage at all. It does mediocre damage for 5 pips, and then adds that plus 25, like, bubble thing. Maybe the bubble is useful, but you could be doing more damage for 1 less pip and adding that trap. Unless it's a very long fight that you have planned, maybe use Hephaestus. But honestly, I'm going to say it would just be more worth it to use the 2 pips to just put up the bubble yourself than to use Hephaestus to do it. So ultimately, I would say Hephaestus just isn't worth it, really, in most cases. Next, we have Keeper of the Flame. Keeper of the Flame, for me, I would say, is more a decent spell. It doesn't do that much damage. I think if it did 100 more damage, it would be a pretty solid 4-pip hit spell, but it doesn't. I think the 400 damage is just, like, a little bit weak. Obviously, it's not too weak, but its spell animation is very long. If its spell animation was shorter, sure, maybe. But otherwise, it's indecent. Next, we have Krampus. And there's 2 variations of Krampus here. We have the 305 to 345 damage and the minus 55% accuracy, or we have the 335 to 375 damage and a minus 45 accuracy. I would say this Krampus right here is really good. This Krampus right here is decent. If you're using Krampus, you're probably not using it to damage. You're using it because you want the enemy to fizzle. This right here, I would say, is better, the minus 55 accuracy, and it's only like a 30 damage difference. I would take that 30 damage difference for a 10% accuracy. So I would say it's really good. This one is pretty decent, but overall, it's Krampus. It's okay. It really depends on what you think. Next, we have Lord of the Night, and I'm just putting this right into Needs a Buff tier. It is bad. Let's be honest. Lord of the Night is not good. And the reason for that is that Lord of the Night is like Vampire, but barely better. Like, barely better. And it's really just not worth using in almost any case. Like, that heal back isn't even worth it. It costs 5 pips. Just use Vampire, to be honest. Like, the extra 60 damage it does from Vampire, not even worth it. So I'm just going to put that right in the Needs a Buff. It's not good. Next, we have Loremaster, and I'd say that this is a decent spell. In PvE, there isn't really too many reasons to use it. That weakness and accuracy debuff isn't going to, like, help you all that much. And the damage is a little bit lower than I think it should be. Maybe if the damage was like 100 higher on average, I'd say it's in a really good tier, but otherwise it's pretty meh. Next, we have Luminous Weaver, which does 370 damage and a weakness. I do like this spell. I would say it's decent. Like Keeper of the Flame, it's a little bit weak, but overall it's pretty decent. I would say it's not bad, which is why it's in the decent tier. And next, we have Nautilus Unleashed. Now, there's 2 branches of Nautilus Unleashed here. We have the 460 to 540 damage one, and then steal 2 charms. Or we have the one where you steal the charm first, and then do 630 damage over time, I believe that says. You know how I feel about damage over times. I would say that this one is more a situational one if the enemy has a blade. This one overall can be useful. I'm not going to put it in a really good. It's decent. I do like the 460 damage and then the steal 2 charms one. I like using the steel charm. I just think it's kind of cool, like if the enemy has the dangerous blade or something, to be able to take it. So I'm going to put it into decent tier. I think that that's fair. Next, we have Ninja Piglets. Now, I used to not understand this spell, but now I've realized that it's actually really good. I would say it's really good. And the reason for that is that it has a solidly high damage to pip ratio. Similar to Headless Horseman, you can see they're designed to be like the same spell. The main difference is that Headless Horseman's weakest damage is higher than the highest damage of the balance. It's solid, but really the only thing that keeps it up here is the damage. If it had higher damage, it would be pretty good, but it's still a good damage to pip ratio. It's a solid hitting spell if you want to use it on a side mob. So overall, I'll just put it in a really good. Next, we have Ninja Pigs, and I'm going to put this into decent. It does a lot of damage for 5 pips, like its damage to pip ratio is really high, but there's really no reason to use it. I would say it doesn't have any other secondary effects. It's just like a lot of damage. If you want a lot of damage, it's decent. I'll put it in the decent tier. Next, we have Pigsy. Pigsy, I'm just gonna put it right in the fucking sick tier. This right here, I would say, is really, really good. it's really, really good without needing a nerf. I would say that this is like at the very, very top of where you can put this spell without making it too broken to needing a nerf. So, Pigsy, really good spell. My first, like, top tier spell without needing a nerf. Next, we have Queen Calypso, which does plus 20% damage to the next spell and then does, like, the damage thing. Really, I don't think Queen Calypso is all that good. I mean, maybe some people do. I don't think it's that good. Like, it doesn't do that much damage. It's 4 pips, and the spell animation also takes an hour. Whatever. Next, we have Rat Spin, and Rat Spin I'm going to put in the fucking sick tier. Rat Spin's really good. It does do the most amount of damage out of a base AoE spell. You can fully upgrade it and make it do the most as well, but out of all the base AoE spells, it does the most amount of damage. It's really good. Solid for a life AoE, and it looks really cool. So I'm just going to put it in the fucking sick tier. Next, we have Reindeer Knight. Now, there's 2 Reindeer Knight paths. There's either the one where you upgrade the base damage or one where you upgrade the overtime damage. The one where you upgrade the overtime damage, I'm just going to say, I'm just going to put it in, like, wherever garbage. It's not good. I'm going to say it. I don't really like Reindeer Knight as is. Upgrading the overtime, I'm just going to say it needs a buff. It's not good. It's bad. But I would say the other Reindeer Knight is a decent spell. I'm going to put it on par with Deer Knight. You can see it does slightly more damage than Deer Knight since it has that upgrade of the base damage, but it's still not enough. I would still rather use Blizzard, to be honest. To put it into perspective like I did with Deer Knight, say Blizzard does 235 damage, which I think is its base damage. You add that 300 to it, it does 535 damage versus this, which would do 490 at base. Really, it's up to you. I just would prefer. So if you think about it, right, then it does that less damage at base, and then over time it would do like say 100 per round. After the second round, it catches up to Blizzard. Then the next round, it would be a little bit meh compared to Blizzard, and then you use Blizzard again at that point, and then the Blizzard is just better, which is my logic behind it. So I would put it there. Next, we have Sacred Charge. Sacred Charge is decent. It does 500 damage and then absorbs 250 damage. I think it's just it's a pretty solid spell, I would say. I do like it. It's pretty good. Samurai is just Ninja Piglets, but worse. Like, if you look at the damage, it's very, very similar, and it costs a full extra pip. I'm just going to say it needs a buff. Either up the damage or, yeah, just up the damage. That's really what you need to do. Next is Savage Paw, which does 500 damage and a blade on yourself. I would say it's really like, I would say it's decent. It's not that good. It's okay. You know, whatever you think. Next is Spiritual Tribunal, which is Spectral Blast, but spiritual. I'm going to say it's really good. This spell is good for one reason. It's Spectral Blast, which is good for balance. It does a lot of damage, but it will boost on the balance enemies. It's good. It's really good for a balance, and I would say it's a decent spell. Next, we have Splash Squatch, which is okay. I'm going to put it right in the really good tier with Ninja Piglets. You can see it's very similar to Ninja Piglets. It's basically the same spell except for Myth, except the damage gap is a little bit narrower. It's a 4-pip spell you hit side enemies with. It's definitely not as good as Headless Horseman, but it's there if you want to use it. Next, we have Winter Moon, which does 490 damage and stuns for a round. I would say that this like needs a buff. It's not that good. You know, actually, you know, I'll put it into the decent tier, like with Savage Paw. But I would say the main issue I have with it is that stuns literally don't mean anything in this game because every enemy has stun block from Celeste, from like Zafaria up to Chrysalis. So there's really no point in using stuns for about a third of the game. Next, we have Ship of Fools, and we all know where this needs to go. Ship of Fools needs a nerf. Ship of Fools is broken. Ship of Fools is disgusting. I've gone over this before. Just watch my Why Ship of Fools is Broken video if you want to. But it's really just a broken card. It does so much damage with that heal back. It's crazy. This needs a nerf. This Ship of Fools, the one that just does solid damage, I'll put it in the sick tier. It's really good. I mean, if you look at it, it does quite a bit of damage, like a solid amount of damage. It's just, you know, it's okay. It's good. It's a good this is a really good 4-pip hit all AoE. This is a broken one. But ultimately, that is my Loremaster tier list with all the spells. You can see all the spells here. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Which ones would you rearrange? If I'm looking over these, I would say that this is all pretty fair. The only one I might move is, like, I think I put Grendel's Amends in the really good tier, actually. I don't think it's on level with most of these. It is a pretty solid card. But it's like at the very, very low end of really good, I would say. The really high end of decent, really low end of really good. But it's solid. Everything else I think is fair. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did I misrank any of them? I'm interested to hear your opinion. But that's it for today. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to drop a like at the sub button. Go support me financially on Patreon and join my Discord server if you wish. We're nearing 300 members, which is pretty darn solid. So, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Adios.